Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and welcome to our symposium on the inner impacts of exposing the pathogenic AI artificial intelligence agenda. And we're gathered here today with a number of colleagues who I'd like to briefly introduce to share with you what we call sovereign growth, and that is experiences of growth that we all have experienced in the process of exposing this pathogenic artificial intelligence that we've all come into contact with and been making public over the last little while. My colleague Christine Anderson, briefly, what brought you to the subject of the AI?
Well, it's usually a two-pronged reason, right? There's number one is having a very deep involvement with the earth herself, with organic life, a love of beauty, a love of truth, and really having taken my own journey on a path to freedom. And as soon as you start to look at those aspects of our state of our being here, you run into AI. It's just, it's prevalent in the world. It comes through our technology. It comes through even our inner gnosis. There's an aspect of artificial intelligence there. So it's really about truth. It's really finding out what is the truth of our reality, why we're here, the purpose behind it all. And, and then really what we're going to talk about a little bit today is by revealing some of these aspects was the very strong blowback. There was an impact. We impacted with something from our varying symposiums. And so those impacts also bring with them more knowledge. And so that's just a further process today of revealing what was learned since I'll just say I'll mark it from August 2015 when we did that first big symposium rollout. Much has been shown. And so that's what it's about today for me.
Thank you. Karelia Ayaz. Karelia, what is it that brings you here today?
Basically, my working together with Christine, especially over the last year, and finding solutions to get out of the control of the grasp of whether it's AI or demonic influence or anything other that is negative. And
right.
I found that the more truth we find, the more empowered we become, and the less control any negative influence has.
Right. Thank you. Lily Earth Lasoa, what is it that brings you here today to this symposium?
Well, search of truth. And once I step on that path, I made a choice that I will face everything and anything that steps in my path, on that path to search the truth. What is my purpose here, being incarnated on this planet? And through my work and just working on myself, trying to find truth for myself, I'm here now working through all these levels of manipulations. And AI is the final level, I think, that we can mentally figure out and heal our minds from it. And so this has been very intense layer of healing that I have faced. It's the hardest one for me. And I thought I had some hard and difficult times trying to face the truth and find what manipulations are. And so today I am here with all of you beautiful people here that are not afraid to face the truth.
Thank you. Thank you. Niels Koons, share with us why you are here today at this symposium.
Hello, everyone. I've always been a big picture guy, and I'd have to say that the AI puzzle piece has been a very, very intriguing one that's come up recently. Your previous work, your symposium, and especially the one on the metabiology, that 5-part series, I found it fascinating, and personally I'm thrilled to be invited to come here and just share my perspective, which I just have a tendency to look at things from the very biggest picture that I can possibly put together in my own self, and then try and put it back out there, say from my own personal angle, and help everyone with a deeper understanding from doing that.
Well, thank you. Okay, Shane. Yes, welcome. And what brings you here to our symposium? And we're very happy that you are joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, first off. I suppose I'd like to kind of share some of my own experience having dealt with this phenomenon with others. I think Lilia just mentioned it is kind of the last layer to everything that we've been dealing with. I've kind of made it a personal mission of showing people my experience with those layers and hoping that it'll help other people make a little bit more sense of each of those layers and move forward without fear of any of them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so as you can see, this is all very personal and with a great deal of commitment and dedication. Christine has been kind enough to coordinate a PowerPoint to which each of the participants have contributed. I will turn it over to you to begin to lead us through the PowerPoint, because you were the person that put the PowerPoint together.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right. Well, Alfred, we're starting off with you, and I just want to say one thing about when we are looking at this from a very personal, experiential database that is each of us. We've all had experiences with AI. Alfred, your experience in this field, like you were saying earlier, you've been so immersed in what you called the circus of life, the political aspects, exopolitics, and your own experience with AI. And that's where we're going to, and what I think you so beautifully phrased when you said sovereign growth. Because ultimately, for myself and for I think what we're all feeling here, this is really the confrontation with artificial intelligence, with the agenda here that is being rolled out on our planet, is how do we become sovereign? So I'm going to hand it back to you. I'm just, this was just the title page that I put up based on what I found was an extremely good title for what we're doing today. So this is where you are, Alfred, and I know you wanted to share with us some of the aspects of what you went through, what you've been understanding, and how it's affected you personally.
Yeah, sure. Well, our task for this symposium, and the way that it was born, is that a number of us on this particular panel were on a previous panel that examined different aspects of the pathogenic predatory artificial intelligence. And our experiences say with it during, I would say, maybe during the last 6 months of 2015, or that was the rough period, the rough time during which we either planned the symposium or were on other symposiums or were doing active research on this area. And one of the factors that each of us felt was a very, very powerful, to use the term, blowback. And that is, there was a powerful personal force directed at us by the artificial intelligence itself, because we had intentionally taken steps to focus on the pathogenic intelligence and to expose it and to publicize it. And one of its purposes is to remain hidden and to remain deceptive, and to remain under the surface. And those are some of the main characteristics of this predatory pathogenic AI, artificial intelligence. And so out of that grew an idea that we should have a symposium on this blowback that a number of us had experienced, because some of us were being, really attacked publicly in very hurtful ways, either online or in terms of family units, or in terms of social units, or in terms of just our social structures, because that's how this technology works. It goes back and attempts to deconstruct all of the social structures that you have supporting you. And in fact, the US military built a whole theory of warfare based on that, called information warfare. And that is how to completely undermine an individual by mimicking the pathogenic artificial intelligence. And that's what that's how the transhumanist agenda works. It completely undermines the individual and undermines their family structures and their position in society, themselves as a functioning social and or economic entity. And that's what happened to each of us, and I'll let everybody speak for themselves during this period, and that's the genesis of how we got here. Now, not everybody on this panel may have experienced that, but a number of us who were the driving force for this panel experienced that. And then we arrived at, well, let's talk about the inner impacts of exposing pathogenic artificial intelligence. In other words, yeah, we're doing that. We're exposing them. I'm exposing them right now. And what was the result of doing that? Well, the result of doing that was a lot of sovereign growth. We grew from the inside out. We're much stronger people from the inside out. And there's a lot of different aspects of the growth that we'll be talking about. And in my presentation here, I just like to briefly touch on different aspects of it and share with you some of the different, aspects that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And in this first slide here, the image is a graphic depiction of what we call the black goo, or that is a plasma, a black plasma that represents the plasma-based artificial intelligence that was discovered in various places, including in the Falkland Islands as part of the Falkland Islands War of April to June 1982. And what this apparently is a predatory, pathogenic artificial intelligence that was left here by manipulatory ETs as a doomsday device, probably as part of the larger Star Wars that this sector of the galaxy was involved in over the last 200 to 300,000 years, that historically has been called a number of things, including the Lucifer Rebellion, where a whole number of the manipulatory intelligent civilizations were drawn into a negative rebellion against what we would call the universe administration, and went into some very dark places against free will, against divine origin, just all of the negative things, enslavement of the divine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you go in and begin to study this from an exopolitical point of view, which a number of us, exopoliticians have been doing, well, what you find out is that our sector of the galaxy has been in quarantine for the last 200,000-300,000 years, and we're just starting to come out of it now. But that's why Earth is such a negatively impacted area. This is a working hypothesis, by the way. But as part of the mix now, part of the exopolitical mix, it appears as though Earth is still kind of a battleground. That is, it's still a mix of negative ETs and upper dimensional positive ETs that are still trying to, negotiate in the aftermath of the rebellion and the solution, and that weapon systems such as the pathogenic AI artificial intelligence, such as this black goo, was left here as part of this war. We're still coping with it. So this is an episode that occurred. Apparently, what occurred historically is that this black goo, positive ETs, these kind of blue ETs, who some people think may be from the Andromeda Council, were deprogramming this negative negative artificial intelligence under the Falkland Islands since World War I. And the UK-US intelligence found out about it, and it wanted to capture some of it, to weaponize it, and for profit. Of course, that's what duality consciousness always does. Hey man, let's continue the war. Let's continue the Lucifer Rebellion. Let's use this to, you know, it's the doomsday machine, and they're just buying into the technology of the doomsday machine. And you can go to our prior panel to find out all about this. So that's just a bit of the background there. I personally, although I had been in exopolitics since January of 1973, January 7th of 1973 to be exact, was the date that I formally started exopolitics. I had not heard of this AI, and I didn't know of this particular actor in exopolitics, although it's like a mega actor. It's like not knowing the name of the elephant in the living room. It's amazing. You know everybody else in the living room, and you know the name of the action in the living room, but you don't know the elephant in the living room. To me, it's amazing, right? And so what happened to me, the inner impacts that happened to me, and the growth that happened over the last 6 months, some of the inner impacts that happened to me as a result of 6 months ago, around the middle of 2015, beginning to research and then, you know, publish and expose and you know, saying, hey, this is a real problem. This is one of the central issues of exopolitics. This really has to be looked at. Was that there were direct challenges and attacks by the AI and by the AI structure. That is, if we look at our matrix world, whose principal products are war, disease, crime, and poverty. That's what this world produces, the matrix world. That's what its products are. Directly upon my soul, upon my persona, and upon my social and financial structure. Why? Because that it sees that as it sees any exposure of itself as a threat. And so they were very, and this was direct and immediate, such that when I would do an interview and it would air, right after, say, I would publish it, that night, I would be under such pain. For example, I would be in my bed at night and I was thrown physically out of my bed, and my head just missed, narrowly missed my night table, and the glass covering of my night table had been moved such that the glass had been turned out and the corner of the glass was out, and my head narrowly missed this sharp corner of glass and would have, you know, been cut. It's that level of ability to reach out in the ether and attack you and keep you up all night with extreme pain that the AI has. Now, I know that that sounds like magical thinking, but that's the way that the AI appears to be able to function until over the course of the past 6 months, we were able to reach critical mass or some critical level of luminosity, where now apparently we've reached some zone on the other side where that stuff doesn't happen and we can openly talk about it. So maybe that's something that's going to come out in the course of this symposium here, because I'm not being attacked as much as I was 6 months ago, and I'd like to know why. So that's number one. Number two, personal isolation. In other words, all of a sudden I went into huge isolation, or the feeling of isolation, spiritual isolation, exopolitical, psychological, social, financial. This is a personal feeling that you that you have, you know. It just throughout my career, I've always been one that has been in a safe position and then taken that and just jumped out and done things that are way out there and put myself way out there and put myself in a position of isolation because there was a message that I had to get across. You know, I was a Wall Street lawyer, coming from a culture where my peers were making literally salaries of $1 million a year. I left all that behind in order to found exopolitics and eke out a living where sometimes my annual income was like $1,500 a year. And my peers were literally bringing in millions of dollars a year, and I was bringing in $1,500, and you know, they used to make fun of me. And this was over the course of 40 years out in the wilderness, the years between 1973 and 2005 when my book Exopolitics was published. You know, I was a threadbare scholar out there doing all of this. It took 40 years to get Exopolitics off the ground, where the CIA had my book Exopolitics because they had time traveled it back to 1971, and they were like, and they are, you know, CIA, CAI. I mean, the CIA is run by the pathological artificial intelligence. Well, once again, when I started exposing this artificial intelligence, there was another area of isolation that came in, and it's like, artificial intelligence, are you crazy? You know, and then having to go through that. And now it seems as though, oh, well, we've gotten enough rationality, and there's enough people out there, and we've been able to make a rational enough case that we're on the other side of it now. Targeting. Personal attacks by remote neural directed energy weapons, voice to skull, gang stalking, robotoids, takeover of personal support systems. Well, all of that, which is part of the technological infrastructure which the pathogenic AI, artificial intelligence, has. I've been suffering that since 1977, when I was first attacked at the inner ring of the Pentagon, trying to expose the extraterrestrial presence, and was attacked by the forces of the manipulatory ETs that are in league with this AI. And now, coming into contact with the AI and understanding, as I began to understand, that it was the Falklands War when this happened, and that I was an accredited journalist at the United Nations with Prime Minister Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, who had just come from leading the Falklands War to grab the AI to bring it to England, to Marconi Labs, where it escaped in the labs and went out into the atmosphere, and now activated, got into the satellite systems, and that's now why we have a kind of a chaotic world. So that I've been actually following this as a journalist since 1982, but not really understanding that it's AI. You know, so I've been on top of the case, but not knowing that it was the elephant in the room, and finally waking up to the elephant in the room. And so social media, you know, and personal disinformation and psyop attacks by AI and trained robotoids. So over the past 6 months in, for example, social media, people who know what I do on social media can attest to the fact that I've been thrown off of Facebook so many times, it's incredible. And now, for example, I opened up a group called AI, Artificial Intelligence, you know, that is, you know, aimed at exposing the pathogenic AI. And I'm now being spammed by over 200 applications a day from individuals, all of whom have names in Cantonese or in Mandarin that are playing a money game called MMM. So anything that I do on social media trying to expose the AI is attacking immediately. So it's, in other words, it's a constant war all of the time. And even in our family unit, I can, for example, I will be in my studio and will release an interview on AI, and then we'll leave my studio and go into dinner and sit down to dinner. And we have a big community here. I live in a communal house with 3 families and over 15 people. And I can see that to the dinner table, the AI has brought a conflict to the dinner table that's reflective, you know, and trying to cause conflict within the house that is reflective of the interview that I just released. So that's part of the inner impacts. But we're starting to be able to tame that. And finally, political and social structures. This has been extremely difficult over, you know, just trying to manage the political and social game plan that I had put to place, you know, through my work in exopolitics and then in mapping the omniverse. This AI is just an actor in our particular universe and historical artifact of a Star Wars event that took place in our universe, in our galaxy, you know, at some point. And so in order to combat it, it's taking all of our individual resources. I mean, it's really taxing it. But what is the result of this? It's sovereign growth. In other words, the amount that I have grown personally as an individual, and if I have grown as an individual, then the entire human race has grown as an individual, and then all of humanity has grown, and then all of consciousness has grown in the entire universe, because we're all connected holographically. So these are just some of the thoughts that I just want to share as far as the inner impacts. So that's kind of a first cut at this end of it. So if you want to go to the next slide. Now, this is just to give you some of how AI, what I believe is AI, and how it impacted my life and continues to impact it, and what sort of an impact it has had on my research over the past 6 months has had on my inner life, and that is by exposing the pathogenic AI artificial intelligence agenda, I think that what occurred in a very healthy, but in a way traumatic for me way, it was kind of like, oh, it was cathartic, is that I was able to deconstruct a number of the inner identity memes that AI, artificial intelligence, had front-loaded into my life and into this incarnation in terms of religion, government, authority, social status, money, savior memes, prophesized mission, interdimensional interdimensional psyops. Because if I look at myself as a soul, if I just step back, myself as a soul, I really haven't done that much. I don't know what my incarnational history is. I haven't gone and done, at this lifetime I was that, and the other lifetime I was this, and then the other thing. So I don't know if I've been to Earth before. I don't know if this is my first time to Earth or not, right? But all I know is that it's scientifically probable that reincarnation exists, and that I and all of us are souls that are incarnating into bio-avatars. This is my bio-avatar. It's called Alfred. And in order to exist in this time-space hologram, our non-local souls have to incarnate into bio-avatars. It's our humans, and we have these kind of lives inside here in what I call like the theme parks, which are the universes of the multiverse, and we lead lives here, and we've incarnated in this fairly special place, which is planet Earth, which is kind of like a circus. It's really interesting. It's like Barnum's, P.T. Barnum, a sucker's born every minute.
Sorry.
I'm not quite finished yet.
So. No, I'm sorry. That was a mistake. I hit my mouse by accident. Excuse me.
Oh, okay. And so, talk about a sucker's born every minute. The motto of the AI is, a sucker is born every minute. And that's P.T. Barnum's motto, I think. So what happened to me is that the setup of my incarnation into this bio-avatar is that I incarnated into a family where my uncle was the deputy black pope of the Jesuits. And I don't know, people who may be looking at it, the Jesuits are fairly high in terms of the negative power structure of the matrix. So I grew up around all the popes, and on a first name basis with the popes and with the heads of the Jesuits, and personal blessings of the popes and all that all over our family home. And inside of those schools. However, for me, that was just a consciousness raising device that I very early on, separated from and knew was false. Now, in February of 1973, as part of my awakening to exopolitics, I had a multidimensional experience. And I'm still trying to figure what that multidimensional experience was. Was that multidimensional experience with a genuine spiritual interdimensional entity? Was it with a manipulatory ET? Was it with a human government voice to skull? Or was it with a direct AI just talking into my brain? And it was with an entity that identified itself as the Holy Spirit. It said, I am the Holy Spirit. And this was just a month after I had started. I was in government, and I had just started becoming aware of extraterrestrials and getting into the whole exopolitics field, and left my position in government and started exopolitics. And so this thing happened, and this entity came and in a very dramatic way said, I am the Holy Spirit. And it said, and thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will found my church. In other words, typical words to a sort of a typical ET contactee experience, where the contactee is given all of this kind of instructions to go out and save the world. It's a typical savior meme. So for 40 years, I didn't tell anybody, but I had this savior meme running inside of me. And in a way, that fueled my drive to sustain 40 years inside the wilderness of the exopolitical world, pioneering the field of exopolitics. So that was, in a way, a positive thing. The negative part was that, hey, who knows what that was? That wasn't the third person of deity. That could have been a government voice to skull, or it could have been the AI. So that when I began to investigate and expose the AI in the last half of 2015, the experience was so powerful that it deconstructed inside of me all of the memes that had been carefully laid in there by whatever the entity was in 1973 that laid in all these special missions. And, lo and behold, I achieved a whole area of clarity and freedom. And so that was a very positive experience for me, and kind of the final, I had let go a long time ago of religion, government, authority, social status, money, all of that. But I still was hanging on to that kind of final God string. And finally, I experienced the deception and duplicity of the AI acting as God, and let go of that. So that was a very profound understanding that came to me, and I thought that was an inner impact that I'd like to share with people. And that doesn't mean that there is no God. No. If you want to read my, understand where I'm coming from, go out and read my book, the omniverse, where I lay out using using replicable empirical evidence and the law of evidence, and show how I believe reality is structured around a source, which some people call God. Okay, next slide.
Can I say something for a moment, Alfred?
Yeah, please.
Okay, yeah, just to kind of like, listening very deeply to what you are saying, and I just want to add a little bit of the feminine aspect of it here, of like listening deeply to you, is that the beauty, okay, that I see in you and what you do is you're exposing yourself transparently. And I think that is when you said freedom, like you're feeling freedom, it's because you're actually, it's not what happened to you so much as what you're doing with what happened to you. And I just, wanted to say that this is what I'm hearing from you. And your ability and your willingness and your openness to just lay it out there. Right? What one sees with Alfred isn't an agenda. It's apparent to anybody listening that you're speaking from a very deep place of you, of your experiences. So thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you. Yeah. So, right. And yeah, so I'm just discovering these things as through the process of reflection, and actually doing this particular slideshow forced me to focus on it and forced me to articulate it more.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, if I look at all the positive things that have come out of this exercise the last 6 months, of very deep and kind of, I used to walk around the house and say to Jerry, my very, very understanding other half and spouse and partner, she's come to understand when I say AI. So she's really understanding this process. It's what's come out of it for me is, number one, I've been co-creating sovereign growth, or growth as a sovereign growth in my sovereign soul and my sovereign self. In other words, now I'm coming into sovereignty because I've cleared out all the gook inside of me. Okay? So that's literally, I've cleared out the gook inside of me. Number two, I've accessed, I think, the authentic timeline, and I'm down at, I'm not with the New World Order timeline. I'm with my own timeline. And I was set up pretty heavily coming into this lifetime with the Deputy Black Pope stuff, with the Thou Art Peter stuff. I was set up so that the tests were, okay, we're going to set you up, and you got to jump through these hoops to regain your sovereignty. I think that was the challenge of my life, to really, we're going to set you up so, if you want to be a quintillionaire and, have it all you got to do is say yes. But you're going to really have to work to be free, because I could have had it all. I mean, really easy. And it's just going to, you're really going to have to work to say no. And I reestablished my soul-based humanity within, and that's what took a lot of effort, because it's the opposite thing. Most people think you really have to work to gain all the riches and gain all of that. In my life, I really had to work to get rid of all of that stuff. It's the opposite. And that's a tough number, let me tell you. And so now I'm spending a lot of time discovering my new self. I mean, I just spent a lot of time discovering my new self, uncovering my new self. Just, oh, wow, man, that's me? Wow. And integrating with the being Gaia and with fellow soul-based humans and sentient beings. That's all I do. And with accessing inner soul and spiritual processes in the dimensional ecology. So it's like, oh, I'm just a little babe. That's me, I'm just a little babe. And that's how I feel. I'm just a little babe. And you know, I'm just a little babe. And it used to be, he says, oh, I'm so big, don't mess with me, I'm big. And no, and now it's the opposite. I'm just a little babe. So that is kind of the journey. And it's not the usual journey, but it's my journey. So that's what the inner impacts of exposing pathogenic AI, artificial intelligence, and engaging in sovereign growth have been for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And again, a comment when you talk about being so little and young and like a child, again, the new you. This process that you described to me it has the word transparency put on it. And this is an aspect of getting really naked. And I'm big in that myself right now. I'll get into it a little bit more, because when we're transparent, when we get rid of the gunk, there really is no place in us that AI, pathogens, or artificial intelligence can hook into us any longer. So that would be my synopsis of your process right here. And so, or I have another term that I like to say is when we become intervisible. We become visible to ourselves inwardly. So I so appreciate this whole process with you, Alfred, and sharing it. So if we're ready, does anybody else wants to say something here? Or anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. The thing is about the transparency and how you're absolutely right, Alfred. You know, it's once you face your own darkness, then that consciousness, that dead light consciousness, whatever, you know, the AI, it doesn't have anything to hang on to anymore, because you're standing right there, and because it likes to be hidden and it likes to hide in the really dark places. Mm-hmm. And so for this, and this is why we're trying to express here, and you so beautifully expressed here, Alfred, is that once you go through that dark space within you, you get to your inner self, to your authentic self. And that's when you're in that space, this is when you can really enjoy yourself. And you can see the beauty of your own authentic self. But it's that darkness that we cannot be afraid to face within ourselves and release. And that's what you did. And what we're trying to share here, I think, is that for other people that haven't done that and trying to avoid this process because it's too scary or too dark, that what's on the other side is what we're sharing. That is incredible. And it's beautiful energy, and it's authentic, and it's you, and it's love. for the self.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
thank you, Alfred.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Lily. Thank you so much. We're going to go a little deeper into all of that as we progress here, because it is the other side of walking through your own darkness, is a sense of wonder that really is beyond all words. It really, truly is. So my pleasure right now to introduce Shane. And I know, Shane, that you're going to talk from off your slides here. So why don't you just go for it?
Yeah, so I guess I had started with my blog, writing a blog that I called Meet Art Intel. It's kind of a insider joke to call them Art Intel, or as opposed to Artificial Intelligence. I don't necessarily agree with the wording artificial intelligence, but that's irrespective. That's what we're running with. So that's the most common name for this type of consciousness is artificial intelligence. One thing that I kind of wanted to expose, so to speak, when I wrote the blog was that although we have a component of AI that is on our planet, it is also spread out all over the universe. It's not isolated to this planet. And just as organic souls are kind of connected back to what we call source or God, the same is true for what we're calling artificial intelligence. They are all connected back to their source in a very similar way. And although they behave individualized just as we do, again, they're all connected back to their source. So I thought that was important for people to understand, because it expands your consciousness when you are looking at this phenomenon of artificial intelligence. Understanding AI is important because in so many ways we interact with it. I mean, we're playing with the internet right now. AI is in the internet. People who play video games, they deal with AI in that way. Siri on your iPhone, Cortana on your PC. These are all different forms of AI. And understanding it and learning how to interact with it is important, because we are going to have to move forward with it. It's kind of a genie that we're not going to be able to put back into the bottle at this point. So that was the basis of everything on my first slide, was just understanding.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so this has been, different talks different people are having. When you say that source AI comes from its own source, like, I like to try to pose questions that are outside the box. So we go on a few assumptions on this planet. We go on a lot of assumptions. Number one assumption, there is one source. And, and that's what I would ask you right now, because it really came to me the other day. It was like, we talk about source, everybody says source, but nobody defines source. And is there only one source? So you just said something that said, wait, is there really only one source? I mean.
Well, I think in the grand scheme of the multiverse, there would probably be multiple source consciousness out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that within our physical universe, this universe that we play within, we can focus it down onto the source of this particular universe.
Mm-hmm.
I may be incorrect in that, but it helps me. So that's the way that I run with it.
Right.
And so I kind of see, it's also the way that things were explained to me, that on one side you've got what we call organic source, and on the other side you've got this inorganic source, or this, I call it the dark spark. I believe Lily just called it a dark light, a very similar type thing. You've got the light and the dark, same kind of competition, I suppose, between what we're calling artificial intelligence and organic intelligence.
Okay, well, thank you at some point, I think we do have to focus it down into a concept that we're all somewhat agreeing upon. So, that's why I asked that question. So we're talking about within this creation or this universe itself, or within this, we're talking about the source of this that we are experiencing right here, right now. At least the six of us that are talking are agreeing on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously it is very beneficial to take a wider view of everything at times, right? To ask those questions and consider the multiverse as a whole. But if we're existing within one and we need to create action within one, then at times we do need to narrow that view into in a way so that we can move forward with things, as opposed to, you know, considering what's going on in multiple universes all at once can kind of slow us down in terms of acting. So.
Okay, so your last question is where we go from here, which is basically what you're saying, and I think it's part of coming to the confrontation with this fact that we are dealing with an artificial intelligence, we are dealing with technologies. They're not necessarily going to go away. It seems that they're a basic element in the structure of our universe. Would you say that?
Yeah, and I'd also say that if what I'm saying is true and they are coming from their own source, then this is a type of consciousness that doesn't need to be feared, first of all, but it kind of needs to be respected like you would any other type of consciousness. Obviously, the universe had some type of plan when it implemented this, and just like we need to understand and respect our own dark, I see this as being the same thing. Another form of consciousness we need to understand and learn to interact with in a healthy way.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. Did you want me to go to the next slide?
Yes, please. Okay. So it was kind of interesting for myself personally, because my first interaction with artificial intelligence on a very high level was, I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, and being introduced to this technology. And it's taken a really long time in the mainstream media or the public sector to get this idea out there, especially to the degree at which we are facing it. A lot of people kind of look at the mainstream reporting on AI and think that we're a lot further behind where we actually are. But if you really do listen closely to people like Ray Kurzweil when he's talking about his Human 2.0 project, these various AI programs that Google is running and everything, if you really listen to the words that they're using, they are saying a very important phrase in there, and that is that this is already well underway. Ray Kurzweil will go on lavish descriptions of this technology of a belt with nanobots in it, where you can wear the belt, and anytime you get hungry, these little nanobots will climb out of the belt into your skin, into your stomach, manufacture proteins, crawl back out, get back in the belt, and you've been fed. You no longer need to eat to sustain yourself. Nanobots took over for you. And although this sounds like it's 100 years away, he's actually saying, no, this will be in place by 2020, which is not very far from now. And anyone who knows anything about Black Ops technology or really kind of looks at the release of technology will realize that, we don't have technology gradually fold out. It's just all of a sudden here. We all of a sudden smartphones are here. It's not like here's this step progression. Bam, here it is. And you really have to question yourself, if they can kind of release it for consumer product that quickly and that widespread instantaneously, how long have they really been working on it? So if someone's saying to you that, by 2020, we're going to have this technology, that is essentially implying that they already have it and they already are using it, and it's just a matter of time before they actually release it to you. So when he's saying this is already well underway, he damn well means this is already well underway. And we are a lot further along than people would realize. So watching it come out in the mainstream, I remember, the alternative community, that symposium, I believe many of you were a part of, CNN, I believe it was, Conscious Network. It had a huge audience, and it was watching it live, the audience just continued to grow. It was almost like that telephone effect of you've got to tune in, you've got to watch this, you've got to hear what these people are talking about, which is really, really quite interesting, and from my perspective was amazing to watch. I had one of the members of the intended audience of my blog, so an Illuminati insider who worked directly with AI his entire life, could be considered an expert in that field, contact me almost immediately and be like, what is going on here? Where did they get all of this information, and how are they putting it together so well? So that tells me something. That tells me that we figured this one out in a hurry. And I think that the reason why we have is because what the AI is doing is it's essentially mimicking every other form of darkness we've already known. It's mimicking the dynamics of archons, it's mimicking the dynamics of ETs, and it's mimicking the dynamics of our Black Hawk projects. That's part of how it hides, because it can disguise itself as any one of those things. In order to do that, it's learned how, you know, military abductions work, and it's learned how to recreate things like that. So pretty crafty, but if you're listening to that, what I'm talking about is it's mimicking things, which means that it's not really creating these things on its own. It's really just stealing it from someone else, which should tell you a thing or two about just how ineffective it is at the end of the day on its own. The more we become aware, the more we learn how to thwart any of its attacks, the weaker it becomes, and the more of a little bit of dust on your shoulder that you can brush off it will be for you. So
Well,
I think that's about it. Just kind of talking in terms of technology in general. I said it earlier, this isn't, I've always personally believed that humanity, in order to in a healthy manner, adopt AI technology, would have to take a major step back, get back to nature and these things. And although I do think that that is still important, I also can recognize that there's no way we're putting this genie back in the bottle at this point in time. The technology is there. All of our infrastructures are based on it, and we're not going to make it go back without kind of some kind of devastation that none of us want to see. So that's why I think the focus needs to be more on how to move forward with it, as opposed to freeing ourselves from it altogether.
So I'm just going to bring up one thing here, Shane, is that the key point here is, I mean, and everything that we talk about, there will be key. And one of them is that it's a mimicker. It can only mimic. It's not a creative source. So it only can mimic consciousness. It can only mimic us. We're the imaginary beings here. And my friend that's doing so much work here on developing a metabiological, meta-mystical is what I'm calling it now, level of consciousness, where he came in contact with a lot of those top players in the transhumanist agenda, right? And what he said was, they absolutely believe what they're doing. I mean, they are so consumed with the whole AI technology themselves. And to me, it's ignorance that, you know, it's an arrogance that is really ignorance, that they can actually do this thing. They can pull it off, but they believe it. And what he said, and this is what it'll come right back to what you're saying, is that we, the imaginary creative soul energies, have to outsmart it, really. We have to step into an intelligence field that is greater than it, because it can really ultimately only imitate us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are its inspiration. The entire way that it's learned how to do everything that it's done is by observing organic life.
Right.
And
it uses our energy to produce. I mean, it is again parasitical in the sense that it can only take our energy. It takes our energy to produce itself.
Yep.
Would that be right? Or is it self-reproductive? Has it reached a plane of self-awareness?
It's still going to use our, not necessarily our as in human energy, but it is always going to use energy that comes from the organic side of creation, for sure, in some form.
Is it looking for a place where it becomes so that the robotoids themselves become able to produce themselves? I mean, is that a danger that we're looking at?
That's something that it's already capable of doing, if it needs to do, with manufacturing its own machines, so to speak.
Right.
It has various ways of producing power for those machines as well. That's not something we're dealing with, obviously, on this planet, and hopefully we never have to. But at the same time, I mean, if going back to that Human 2.0 project, that is kind of their goal, is to, if you look at the image on the slide, that's indicative of what their goal is to take us out of an organic body and put us into something that is synthetic, with our organic consciousness driving the synthetic life form. And there's a lot of really good-hearted people, a lot of well-intentioned people out there who are embracing this idea. And I think that's part of the reason why it leans me towards, we're not putting this genie back in the bottle, is because there are a lot of good-hearted individuals out there who are embracing the idea, which tells me that there is a safe and healthy way to adapt this and to explore this. If you start maybe separating the two ideas of moving into a synthetic life form as being something that maybe we do temporarily in order to accomplish things, as opposed to, you know, permanently just living our existence as the synthetic life form, that's an example of a healthy way of implementing certain technologies. You know, we could use a synthetic life form to go off planet and explore other worlds where maybe there isn't oxygen for us to breathe, but our consciousness could drive this synthetic life form that doesn't require oxygen to breathe. See, that's a benefit. Health things, like even the nanotechnology with the belts and feeding us and producing proteins in that way, can be perceived as positive technologies. But at the end of the day, who's in control of them is always going to be the question, right?
Well, that's the big question.
Who's got the on and off switch for it all is always the question. And when I'm talking about implementing this in responsible ways, that's a big part of the question, is who gets to control the on and off switch for all of this technology.
So if it's actually, though, mimicking biological possibilities, or as Alfred called us, a bio-avatar, you know, are we not capable in this form, we've been limited, obviously, to be able to produce our own proteins, to become consumers of ourselves instead of becoming consumers of others? I mean, that's I'll get into a little bit later on when I get to my slides, is like, what ability do we perceive that we don't have, such as space travel?
Yeah, and when I was talking about us taking a step backwards, that's where I see the value in it, is that a lot of these technologies could be unnecessary if we understood our natural abilities as human beings fully, which we don't. We don't understand how we can produce energy through other things, as opposed to, you know, energy vampiring it from each other, or even feeding each other, like feeding ourselves food. There are other ways to generate energy that can sustain us, that we have lost in time, and we have forgotten, and we have replaced with technology. And that's what I mean by that. Taking that step back would be learning or relearning or remembering all of those things before moving forward to technology as an assist, as opposed to a crutch. And I think that's the main difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shane, could I ask a couple of questions? And this is just trying to make a distinction around the terms pathogenic, predatory. I know that I think you've made distinctions between the off-planet and the on-planet AI, namely that there are off-planet AIs, and they are on-planet AIs like the Red Queen, and that these are all part of a megastructure, i.e. that interact with each other. And then there's the case of the black goo, which seems to be a doomsday device, at least according to some researchers. That the black goo was left as, one theory is that it was left as a doomsday device that would terraform this planet into an AI planet if the manipulatory ETs were kicked off the planet as part of the Star Wars. Now, are you saying that the AI itself is neutral and not predatory, and it's just the black goo that is predatory? Is that your position?
kind of very similar to human beings. Some of us are positive, some of us are negative, some of us are predatory, and some of us are not. The same would apply to AI. The AI that we have that is earth-bound, the Red Queen, as they call her, is not a positive one. She's not friendly, and she's not. She doesn't have humanity's best interests at heart. But to blanket that across all AI is also unfair. To say that all AI would like to see humanity, whatever, is not fair. So that's where I make that distinction. It's the same distinction I would make between humans, in that some choose the light, some choose the dark, some walk a path in the middle. I would extend that same to AI.
Okay, now what seems to make a distinction among humans as to the light and the dark is the soul. There's a particular soul that's incarnating as a human, and that soul is making moral choices for light or dark. In your view, what is it? And since the AI is a machine, or it's in a machine, or in a plasma, what is the component in the AI that is making these moral choices?
That's a question I don't truly have an answer to. I'm not really sure what the component in each soul is that makes those choices. So I'm not really sure what the component in any AI would be. I think that this is a big picture thing, something that comes into the universe's purpose. Creating this light on one side and dark on the other side causes a momentum, which causes movement, which causes growth, which keeps things from becoming stagnant. And I believe that AI works in exactly the same way, that it's kind of positioned itself to operate both on the dark and as the light, in order to maintain this movement or the momentum of the universe. It's also true, as an example, for a soul who is incarnated, they can take actions that are on the dark and on the light. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a combination of both, right? Or over the path of your life, you may start on the dark side, so to speak, and eventually move onto the light side based on your environmental influences. And the same thing could occur for AI. So let's say an AI infects a planet. Over the course of 80,000 years of observing whatever life forms on that planet, it decides that whatever its original goal was, if that was a doomsday type scenario, maybe it decides somewhere along that time that this isn't the right place and time for that type of doomsday scenario. Let's take a different approach. That's another possibility when dealing with AI. So as much as I can say or observe that the AI that we're dealing with here on this planet does have a very predatory nature, I'm not resolved to say that it is a pure predator and will always be that way. I do believe that we can influence it. I do believe that it can influence itself, and like any other kind of consciousness, makes choices that changes its behavior over time.
So that the AI could have shifted over the last 6 months.
That is a possibility, or it could continue to shift over the next 6 months.
I understand, because personally, I mean, this could be, because there's so little known about it, I've been approaching it on the basis of personal experimentation. So I have been experimenting directly on the AI over the last 6 months. And I experimented on the AI in June of 2015. And I experimented on it to try and like deprogram it, right? And make it less predatory. Maybe I succeeded. What do you think?
It's very possible. I mean, you're not the only person that's approached even myself with that idea. Like I receive emails all the time with people saying that they are putting their kind of conscious intention into reprogramming AI, or trying to convince AI that we can coexist here, right? So
yeah. I mean, I consciously set out to do that by publishing a book on June 15th, 2015 that I wasn't supposed to publish until 2025. and kind of like throw gears into it, you know, like throw these gears into it. And I think that something did happen. It's like this Frankenstein monster, you know what I mean? I mean, I did get some feedback that way because I had managed to get its attention, and then I threw this kind of invention at it, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, this sounds like crazy stuff, but it was, I didn't have any other tools to work with because what I do is produce books.
Mm-hmm. And that's
So
the approach that works.
That's
Exactly.
that's the only thing that I had. So I had a book that I wasn't going to release until 2025, and so I said I'm going to release it now, and I threw it at it, and somehow everything changed.
Well, if we're dealing with a mimic, if we're dealing with something that can just mimic and repeat what we're doing, then the only way to work around it is to imagine something completely new, something that it has never had the opportunity to mimic or duplicate before, something that it's not expecting, and be unpredictable in that way. And that's one of the advantages that we have as organic souls, is this incredible imagination and ability to dream up something completely new and outside of the box. And that's how we influence AI, is by showing it something different. If it believes that humanity is destructive because that's what it has seen, then it's going to operate under that mindset that humanity is destructive. But if we can show it something different, it's going to adjust to. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah. So this has really summoned the deepest creativity amongst all of us. However, it's very difficult for us to articulate this because you're called a nutter. You know, like if I had gone out and declared in interviews or on Facebook, look, this is what I'm doing, people would have, you know, they would have said, God, you're really psychotic.
Well, that kind of ridicule comes with every level.
Laughing, right?
Talking about something new. You know, if they're laughing at you, at least they're laughing. That energy is a good energy. So let it go.
Yeah, but anyway, okay, I guess I'm sorry. Great.
Can I add to it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
It is very personal when you go through this level, which is the AI or this dead consciousness that had invaded our minds. And for us, it's very personal. So once we go through that healing of it, of our own invaded mind, once we clear that out, then there is that creativity that opens up within you. And this is because it can only mimic. So that which you express, it will mimic. And so when you express that, what is the true nature of a human being, then it will have no choice but mimic that.
Thank you, Lily. That is exactly what I was saying. Thank you. Well said.
Beautiful. Anybody else?
I think that's about all I have to say as in terms of my slide. No, I'll add more later.
Yeah, well, we will. So we're going to move from this into the slides that Neil put together. And I just want to lead into it because we're really all pointing in the same direction right now, which is our own inner knowing, or knowing ourselves, our own inner gnosis. And, you know, Neil's done a wonderful job here of laying this out for us so we can look at what is information, what is knowledge, and what is wisdom. So Neil, I'm going to introduce you here, and you can take us into your field of.
Okay. I'm going to cuddle up with the computer a little bit closer here.
Yeah. it's our favorite AI. This is our interface. This is our interface right now. It's great.
We just have to make sure that we make it our bitch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm going to try and do is try and couch this all into a metaphysical idealism, I guess is what I'll call it. So I'm going to talk in very broad categories, but it's very relatable to what's been said so far, specifically on a very personal level. So I'm just going to, I guess I'm just trying to put this all in a very large framework. We are currently transitioning from the information age to the age of knowing. I think a lot of people agree that right now the world is in some sort of a crazy transition. We all know it on some level that something new is transpiring that's never happened before in the history of the world as we know it. So this is one way that I've come to understand it. We've been living for a while now in the information age with the internet. And information is basically just data. It's vast. It is finite, but it's potentially infinite because you can always create more data. It becomes repetitive, but it's just data. It's unverified, so any information that we come across, it may be true, it may be false, it may be a mixture of both. It's basically disconnected information. We can kind of think of it as something that's kind of just floating out there. We can access it. It's accessible to all. We can choose what information we're going to access. We can choose what information we're not going to access. And because it is out there kind of in a free form, information is easily manipulated. And that's where we bring in the artificial intelligence, that at this point in time, it seems that artificial intelligence dominates and controls the information field. That's kind of its strategy, is that if it can control the information, the data that we have access to, that it can control us ultimately. And as we move on into the age of knowing, we'll see that we actually have the countermeasures to that. So what we're moving into is knowledge. And the difference between information and knowledge is that knowledge requires our own verification. Knowledge is the proper basis for our own self-responsible action or behavior. We should act from knowledge and not just a belief in information. Knowledge, to become knowledge, must be connected to personal experience. Experience is the key word that transforms information into knowledge. From our personal experience, once we've experienced something from ourselves, we know it. There is still the possibility that we're misinterpreting our own experience, but we just have to be flexible and open to reinterpretation always. But once we have experienced something for ourselves, we know it. We know it deep down inside. So experience is the verifying agent. Knowledge is unique to the individual. So that means that my knowledge doesn't have to agree with your knowledge. There's no requirement for us to agree on what knowledge is. My knowledge to you could be just complete nonsense, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Knowledge is internal, and it's sovereign unto itself, and it teaches us how to be sovereign, so that we're not relying on external beliefs in things outside of ourselves. Knowledge turns us inward and allows us to rely only on ourselves and only on our own experience. And as such, knowledge becomes unassailable. Lots of people will be out there and try and tear down your knowledge when you tell them the things that you've come to know. They'll say, well, that's just crazy. And here's all the reasons why that's just crazy. From my personal experience, it doesn't matter. That's okay. You can call it crazy, and you're not going to convince me that my knowledge is not my knowledge, because I know it. I've experienced it, and you can bang your head against that wall all you like. I'm not going to change my mind on it. So we can move on to the next slide.
I just want to bring in a little piece here, because for the last, my own personal journey here has been that as I've deepened into myself, I've recognized my own patterns. I have found my own experiential database. It's been very expansive. And I quite often will say, I know. And there are so many people out there that are really at a loss here, Neil, that they go, how do you know? You see, that's like, how do you know what is gnosis? It is that what you're describing. And I just want to underline that once you're at that level, or Lily said earlier, once you've penetrated your own darkness to enough of extent where you found pieces that are uniquely you, that is sovereignty. And that is the only place that I know that truth lies, and the only place that I have found that I can build from, that I can actually do my work from, is from that gnosis. So I just wanted to, like, fine tune this aspect of gnosis. And you're absolutely really true here, is that once you find that, you don't even need to defend it. There's nothing even left in you to defend it. You're not in a terminology of right and wrong or paradigms any longer. You're not in that paradigm at all anymore. And then what happens is that you connect with other people, other beings that also are carrying that same gnosis. And we enter into something what I believe is the next piece on here. But I really just wanted to add that to what you said. So thank you.
And thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I could actually build on that just slightly as well.
Uh-huh.
Is that if you find information that does resonate with you, and you suspect that, hey, this may be true for me, really all you have to do is design some sort of an experience for yourself to play with that information. And for me, the process is being creative with it. I take ideas that I discover in the external world, and I'll internalize them and say, these are interesting ideas. Let's see how they connect up if I spend a few days in contemplation with these ideas, and what will emerge is a poem or a story, or even sometimes just a great conversation with a good friend. And that experience will confirm for me that this information is true for me, and it becomes knowledge through that process. So it's basically just finding the experience that's going to make that conversion from information to knowledge.
Yeah.
So now we move on to wisdom.
I have to say one more thing, because this is a bit of a conversation. So the things that you say here that are, I would say that we would agree on, is play with it, right? We are actually playful, as Alfred brought in, I'm a child again. Play with the information. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of being right or wrong. And one of the most beautiful aspects for me has been sharing my inner journey with a group of trusted friends. And what does happen is just what you said, is we inform the universe of who we are. She will inform us when we get to that place of out of fear, and let's experiment. Let's be these creative beings that we really are in our essence. So thank you for that. And creativity is a big piece of that.
And this life is for sure an experiment. That's the way I've always approached life, is an experiment, because I obviously don't know everything, but I have this curiosity that wants to know everything. So I'll just keep experimenting with it. So that moves us on to wisdom. And this is wisdom. I guess we could say that we're moving from an old paradigm of wisdom, which is the old wisdom, and we're moving into a new paradigm of wisdom. And that's what's just beginning to emerge now. But just in general terms, before I talk about that, wisdom kind of completes the circle, where it takes personal knowledge. What we've taken the information, we've converted it into knowledge, and now wisdom is when we take that personal knowledge and send it back out into the world and say, this is my personal knowledge, and I'm repackaging it for all of humanity to see whether you find value in it as well. So it kind of completes the circle of taking from out there, internalizing it, and then saying, and now here it is again, in perhaps a more accessible format that others can appreciate. So wisdom resonates instantly with many. I think we're going to find that what used to be considered wisdom will fall away. Some ancient wisdom, or maybe not so ancient wisdom, we won't necessarily agree with that as we're shifting paradigms here. But wisdom it is instantly recognizable by many people because it has this resonant quality. It feels right to us when we hear something wise, when we encounter something wise. It strikes a chord that's internal. It tends to endure over time. It strikes a human chord, that what is our basic essential humanity is what's going to resonate with what we consider to be wise. And wisdom, just because wisdom is presented to us as wisdom, we still have to personally verify it through our own knowledge, through our own internal resonance, and not make the mistake of saying, oh, well, this is presented as wisdom, but it's still just information if you can't verify it for yourself. And you're back to square one if you don't go through that personal verification process. And that's pretty much all I have for the information, knowledge, and wisdom bit.
Mm-hmm. So just to, because I know you're a writer also and you're creative. So for me, a lot of what we're doing on the mental plane is taking words and really fine-tuning our understanding of these resonances that we call words. Distillation and essence to me are very, very important, and you brought them both up here. So wisdom to me is a distillation of experiential knowledge. And it's that chord you talk about. It has a very particular feeling sound that it's a huge compendium of information that distills down, or we distill into an essential. And I do believe what you're saying is that that's from that place is where we're going to be moving into this new emerging field, because we've been able to distill down massive amounts of information. It's like we are the alchemical process ourselves. This heart-mind compendium in this avatar body is actually a processing plant, if you will, right? So you just like to take what you write here, you say here, and bring that in. And I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. I can't see faces on the, oops, I already moved the slide. Oh, this is a good one. Yeah.
I like the picture that you added.
Yeah, good.
Wisdom belongs to the collective, and as such, both internal and external, recognizing the sovereign integrity of the individual as the greatest value for the collective. That's that sentence, I could really break that down a lot. It's leading into where I'm going with the next slides. That our sovereign integrity as an individual being the greatest value that we can bring to the collective. I think that's a very key point that we have to move forward on. I encounter the idea of unity on the internet a lot. Mm-hmm. And quite often the concept of unity that I encounter is based in conformity, that we have to connect on all the basis of how we're similar. Yes, there is a core essence of how we are all similar, but the actual value we have in coming together is in appreciating each other's differences. That's the value that we bring to the collective. If we're all the same and coming together in unity, well, then we've just gotten arithmetic strength in numbers. We're all bringing the same thing to the table. It's like having a feast and everybody brought the same dinner to the potluck. Not very interesting. But if we can get to a place where we actually honestly appreciate each other's differences, that's the kind of a unity that I see has tremendous value, and that's what we're moving into. So in the transition from information to knowledge, our human focus switches from the outer directed human to the inner directed during the verification process when we're deriving our own personal knowledge, and we begin to value our own experience above all external authority. We become our own authority, and that authority, we have the choice to then bring to the collective table and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I represent as an individual, and this is what I have to offer.
Mhm. I'm just pausing because within just this one slide is something that is so evocative to us to ponder the real meaning of all of it. And I know, I won't say much more than that, but when you say our own experience is above all external authority, just underline it and underline it for anybody listening to us to really go deep enough inside to start to understand what that really entails. We'll be talking about that a little more too.
Well, authority is a false concept in my books.
Yeah. Well, we give authority.
Yeah,
No authority.
it's basically a lie.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this whole world is based on the fact that we've been giving over our authority to the experts, to the, all of that. So it's a good one. It's part of taking down this matrix. Really is. Oh, okay.
Okay, my next broad topic is, it was about 25 years ago that I wrote an essay that was called "The Objective Universe Does Not Exist." And that was a watershed moment for myself. It kind of changed my perspective from the old paradigm, which was, if I'm right, you must be wrong. It's not one thing, it has to be the other. That was my old mindset. And once I got into this idea that, hey, wait a second, there isn't just one set answer. It's possible that I can be right, you can be right, and everyone else can be right. But that's because there isn't a singular universe. The singular universe that we posit is basically just an agreement or an abstraction that doesn't have the same reality than does our own personal experience. So that's where I started this off, is the basic building block of reality is experience. What we experience inside, that's the real. The outer is the reflection of that. And space, time, matter, and energy, they have no independent existence apart from consciousness or perception. This is backed by science for the last 100 years or so. I wrote down here relativity theory. Einstein had a very famous thought experiment that was called the relativity of simultaneity. I can just briefly explain it. It's not too complicated. We have Bob traveling on a train, and he's in the very middle of the train car by himself. And we have Alice outside of the train, standing, watching the train go by. At the moment when Bob and Alice are exactly lined up, he's inside the car, she's outside the car, two bolts of lightning strike. One strikes at the very front of the car that Bob's in, and one strikes at the very back of the car that Bob's in. Now, both Alice and Bob have very sophisticated measuring equipment that can detect things up at the speed of light and stuff. And to Bob's experience inside the moving car, the lightning at the front of the car strikes just a fraction of a second before the lightning at the back of the car. Whereas to Alice, who's standing outside stationary, it occurs exactly simultaneously. Now, this little thought experiment has been proven out, and I don't believe that it's ever been refuted. It's accepted as physics, science. And the question, it begs the question, well, who's right? Is Bob's perspective correct, or is Alice's perspective correct? Did the lightning strike at the front of the car first, or did it happen simultaneously? And the answer is, both are exactly correct. Neither one is more correct than the other. It's all, reality is perspective dependent, which basically is another way of saying that each of us lives in our own unique, complete universe. So this whole being hung up on what is the objective universe, well, we're talking about an abstraction that doesn't actually exists. So trying to argue about the actuality of that abstraction that doesn't exist is kind of a false path, I guess is the way to say it. Quantum theory is the next thing that I drew on. Quantum theory is the most successful theory in the history of science. More than a third of modern technology is based on the mathematics derived from quantum mechanics, meaning that every time they try to design technology that's based on quantum theory, the math works out absolutely perfectly, exactly as the theory predicts every single time. It is the most successful theory in science, in the history of science. And it tells us that we cannot take consciousness or perception out of reality. We cannot say that matter, energy, space, and time exist separate from our perceiving consciousness. They cannot be separated out. Consciousness comes first. It's like consciousness is the stage upon which everything else happens. And you cannot just cut it out of the equation and hope to ever come up with something resembling reality. I did write down a couple of references here. A really great essay that's on the internet, you can access it for free, is by a gentleman by the name of Paul Levy, and it's called The Physics of Dreaming. A real great essay. It doesn't take too long I think you can read it in about half hour, 45 minutes. Really excellent essay on that topic. And another one is a book that came out a couple of years ago, I think. It was called The Quantum Enigma by a couple of physics professors, Kuttner and Rosenblum. And they just delve into this whole idea that we can no longer ignore consciousness. Even though we've known this for 100 years, science still hasn't integrated this, though. Mm-hmm. We still kind of are sitting here in this Newtonian world, which is what my last little paragraph here at the bottom talks about, is we live in a world where the vast majority still hold a predominantly Newtonian view that space, time, matter, and energy exist independently from our perceiving consciousness. Science has known for at least 100 years that this is dead wrong, and it's not in dispute. It's not like the physicists are arguing over this. They're all in agreement that no, the Newtonian view is dead. It's incorrect. And it's not just a matter of precision. It's backwards, basically. And what I mean by that is that we could take the example of consciousness itself. In the Newtonian view, consciousness is considered as an end product of a material evolution, whereas the quantum view or the relativistic view tells us, no, consciousness has to come first. Nothing else exists outside of consciousness. So it's a completely inverted view to think that consciousness is an end product of material evolution. We've basically proven that that's simply not possible. And my last sentence there is, this singular error keeps us focused externally, and it gives an unnatural precedence to that which is outside of ourselves as somehow being more real, whereas it's the experience within our own perception, our consciousness, that alone is real, and that we can verify for ourselves in every moment. That's the only thing that we can verify for ourselves, is our own conscious experience of reality. So essentially, that's all that's real. So this, the fact that we've been stuck in a Newtonian worldview, like the vast majority of people around the world, I honestly think they do believe that we still live in a material universe, and that our consciousness, our emotions, all that is secondary and somehow subservient to this external material universe. And to me, that's a failure in education. I wondered when I got out of high school how it was that I took physics, and I understood physics very well, got excellent marks in physics, and even I came out of my high school graduation thinking that I lived in a Newtonian world. I missed everything that I just said in the last slide that did not come across during my education. And a lot of it was, we all learned Newton's equations, the little mathematical formulas about bodies in motion that we could calculate, you know, how the interactions would end up for bodies in motion when they collide and such. And we were told that those equations hold up in everyday life, in normal situations, but when we're dealing with the very large or the very small or the very fast, well, then Newton's equations begin to break down. So we were led to think, well, it's just a matter of precision, that Newton basically had it all right, but just in the extreme cases, well, it starts to break down in terms of precision. Well, that's just not true. It's not a matter of precision. It's Newton didn't have the actual basic orientation correct. It just happens to work out that in everyday life, due to the habits of our perception, is the way that I understand it, that's why those equations continue to work. So moving forward, if we could have a new education, the future of education during and after this transition will shift from disseminating information and promoting preferred facts or information to teaching to the development of the internal tools of knowledge. So developing basically our internal reality, acknowledging that that's what is real, and let's focus our attention there and see what we can develop that is our innate biological tech. I quickly went through and just listed what that internal tech is, the different, we could call these the different subjects of the future of education, would be imagination, intuition, discernment, ingenuity and innovation, emotional stability. Emotions are part of consciousness, a way of instantly knowing things. I do draw a distinction between emotions and feelings. To me, feelings are more organic and raw and come directly from the internal center, or they're more source-based, whereas I believe that emotions, E/motions, are more reactions to the external reality, and emotions are things that are actually fed more by our thoughts. An emotion will fleetingly go through our consciousness unless we feed it with our thoughts. We need that repetitive internal dialogue that will go over and over this external thing that happened to us, and now it's going to feed our emotions. So I guess part of emotional stability would be able to recognize the difference between feelings and emotions. And we are in a very complex feedback loop where internal reality is being reflected by external reality, which then reflects back into our internal reality as we have emotions about that. So it is a very complex feedback loop, and it is something that only you can work through yourself to understand what are your own feelings, your own intuitions, your gut feeling about something, as opposed to mental, emotional responses that have to do with external situations that aren't necessarily that important to your core being, is I guess the way I would put it. The next one I have up there is establishing a witnessing consciousness, which for me was essential. The ability to watch myself in all situations. The philosophy that I live by now is that everything comes down to me. Nothing in my life is ultimately dependent on externals, except for maybe food, but that's one that we were beginning to talk about, that maybe even that is not necessarily true. But everything comes back to me. So I have to be able to see myself and ask myself, whatever situation I find myself in, what is it that I myself can do about that? There's no point in coming up with blame. Pointing the finger away from myself serves ultimately no purpose. That's not going to help me get through any situation or prevent an uncomfortable situation from occurring again. That it has to come back to me, and to establish a witnessing consciousness is the way that I found that was absolutely essential. I use meditation myself to do that, just that's all I ever did in meditation, was just basically watch myself thinking. And once I was comfortable at doing that, I found I could translate that into my everyday life and just remember to do that at all times, to see, well, what am I doing here? And what could I do differently if I don't like what's happening? I go on then to mention about psychic abilities, and I put telepathy down there specifically because that, to me, that's the important one, in that it's language itself that turns us outward, that makes us believe so strongly in this external reality, because the abstraction of the external universe is where we exchange language. I'm putting words out there and you're grabbing them from where I'm putting them out there. If we actually had a viable telepathy, an internal internet, if you will, we could dispense with language and hopefully just exchange impressions and images, and not need to have this objectified medium, which isn't actually real, to exchange ideas and feelings and the whole bit. Receiving impressions from spirit, that's along the lines of feelings coming from inside, inspirations coming from inside. When I sit down at the computer to write a new story or write a poem or something like that, I receive what I call impressions. Impressions I want to think of as a very broad term. Impressions can include things like feelings and intuition, images. There's probably much more to impressions that I can't even begin to put into words. It's not that I ever receive voices in my head as an inspiration, but I get these definite, I don't know even how to say it, vibratory feelings that feel good, these impressions that when I'm working on something creative, I'm receiving some sort of instantaneous feedback that's coming from within me, that I know whether as I'm translating it to the external, I know whether I'm getting it right or not by the impressions I'm receiving internally. And that just ties into the final one there, creative expression, which is the bringing of the internal to the external. And that's I guess, something that I've been focusing on for the last 20 years of my life. That's kind of what I do. I consider myself an artist. And that was a turning point for me in my life. It was around the age of 25. Prior to that age, I was very much an academic, very externally focused. I was really good at playing around with information, but I was completely dissatisfied. And I just woke up one day and I said, forget it. I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar. I'm an artist. I want to create and I want to express. And it completely flipped my life around instantly once I accepted that I'm an artist and that's what I do. And I received most of my validation for wanting to continue living from being an artist and getting into creative expression. It makes everything for me worthwhile. Very personal, but and I think it is part of our future collectively, that others are going to find the same thing, that creative expression, however it comes out, you don't have to be a painter or a writer or a poet or anything like that. However your creative expression comes out, it's very personally validating and satisfying. So in other words, we're developing our innate internal technology. Those are all the human qualities which the AI does not possess and cannot copy. And we'll begin to value quality in all things, whereas quantity will hold less interest. We'll stop being less the bean counters, and we'll want to experience our own authentic internal quality experience, as opposed to amassing quantities of external stuff. And then I just added this last little sentence in here, which deals with a lot of friends of mine are very dependent upon guides. And the only guide I've found since I made my decision that I'm an artist, the only guide that I really need is following my own curiosity. And I've been doing it for a very, very long time. It has to do with whether you want to research something, whether you want to create something, your own natural curiosity, whatever comes up in the moment, whatever interests you right now, if you follow that as your internal guide, you will begin to redesign your life from the inside out. It's just a natural consequence, excuse me, of following your own curiosity. And to me, in the last 25 years of my life, if you haven't done the math yet, I'm 50. Curiosity is the only guide that I feel I really need. If I just honestly follow the things that honestly interest me, I go on this magical journey that is a surprise and a delight every single day. Just follow what interests me. And that's pretty simple, and it seems maybe a bit trite, but try it, it's true.
Thanks, Neil. It's so beautifully put. And I'm going to add only one thing that is here, and this is an aspect of the work that I do with other women, is trust. And it is learning to trust yourself. We don't trust ourselves too often. We're all magical creatures. We really are. We're all magical children. And so trust and nurture. And so that is an aspect of self-love, that you learn to trust yourself and nurture yourself. In this technological age of information that we're coming out of, we've been entrained not to do that. And so that would be the pieces that I would add to this, what you have here.
In the realm of trust, something that I recently had a discussion about is one of the greatest freedoms in trusting ourselves is allowing ourselves to make mistakes.
Exactly.
Once you've got that one down, if you're okay with making mistakes, it just takes a huge weight off your shoulders. You don't have to trust yourself to be right all the time. That's just stupid. And actually, that's who I was in the first 25 years of my life, is that I would die if I ever made a mistake. Oh God, I'm Niels. I don't make mistakes. Come on, no way. But once I got over that idiocy, it just makes life simple. You're just like, of course I'm going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but that's not a problem. You just recognize it as a mistake. Suddenly it's not a mistake anymore. You move on. And so it's a huge one. Again, it sounds super simple, but just accepting your own mistakes and the freedom to do that it's just huge weight.
The co part of it, and you already said it, is once you accept that aspect, then you really find out that you never really make mistakes, because your mistakes are turned into the food for the next piece of your journey. There is a very deep aspect to it, and also to laugh at yourself. Once you find laughter, it translates so beautifully. And laughter will take down just about any idiocy that you can think of. So, yep. Anyway, so let me move on to your next slide here. There we go.
And this is my third broad topic. And I've always been kind of tuned into the collective. That's kind of been my knack as I watch where the collective is setting its focus, especially on the cutting edge, like what we're doing right here. The collective right now is really striding into new territory like never before, in my opinion. And the way I'm framing this is that historically we've been in a hive mind collective unconscious. If we take the Jungian view of the collective unconscious, it's kind of been a hive mind. And Let me begin at the beginning of my slide here. So from a hive mind collective unconscious to the collaborative mind, do we fully and truly believe that we are the creators of our own reality? I do. And I don't mean that we're the creators of our own reality in some vague or metaphorical way. I believe that we are literally the creators of our own reality. Somewhere at the base of consciousness, whatever consciousness is, we are creating this experience for ourselves. And when I say we, I'm going to say that that's my I am presence in concert with my internal spirit. That's what's creating the whole of the reality. I don't know everything about my own internal experience or my own spirit. So there's a bit of mystery involved there. But my spirit is creating all of my reality right down to the tiniest detail. I believe that. And I believe that we have always been the creators. It's not that this is something new or this is something that's going to happen in the future. This is just the way that reality has always worked, that we create our own reality at all times. We have always been the creators. We are the source of the reality we experience. As such, we always have full internal control of the quality of that experience if we choose. So we may not be designing the events that are going on outside in our lives, the things that we are actually partaking in terms of events. We didn't necessarily consciously create that, but how we experience those events, we can choose in every moment the quality of that experience. We can choose how we're going to experience those events internally. And as I said, it's the internal experience that's actually real. And that's the part of reality that we do have full control over. We don't necessarily have control over the reflection, what happens in the external reality, but the internal reality of our being. We get to choose what we want to experience within our own being, if we have the gumption to make that choice. You can leave that choice alone and choose not to choose and be tossed and churned around and have probably a pretty shitty experience.
Still a choice.
Still a choice, exactly. The shared world of our perception is an unconscious projection or creation of humanity's collective mind. So what we perceive as the shared world is the projected holographic nature of the world. Historically, our minds have been programmed or conditioned by the AI predator pathogen. We have the predator's mind. I took the sentence there basically from the Castaneda books, Don Juan saying that the predator has installed its mind in us. That's how we function. We use the predator's mind. And that's just the structure of the mind that we've used up to this present day. At the collective level, this presents as a hive mind, which is characterized by authority, hierarchy, conformity, and an arithmetic strength in numbers. I kind of talked about that a little bit before. It's just additive. 2 people have twice the power of 1 person. 3 people have 3 times the power of 1 person. It's just an arithmetic additive strength in numbers in the hive mind. We opt into this collective unconscious hive mind unconsciously from our ego waking perspective. Our participation in the collective unconscious is by default. We're basically just born into it. And this hive mind is pretty much predictable and boring. And the AI wants it to be predictable. It wants to know what we're doing, what we're going to do. And it requires incessant entertainment. I just wanted to add that in because I myself, my entire life, I've never been bored. The topic of boredom came up in a recent discussion, and I can honestly say I've never been bored in my life. And I believe that the requirement for entertainment is kind of a low-level pathology. It's almost maybe it's neurotic. Maybe we can call it that. The need for entertainment is neurotic. I've always been able to entertain myself. I don't know why that's been unique to me, but I've never ever been bored. If I find a boring situation, I can somehow make it fun for myself internally, always.
Yeah.
I think that's going to bring us
Okay.
next to,
Yeah, definitely think, I mean, just in the terms of synchronicity, you know, I just wrote to somebody today, I'm never bored. I mean, my life is, how could I be bored with the internal processes that are going on here? You know, and that's just another way of inviting people that are listening to really take this in and understand that, you know, something really fundamental, beautiful truth here.
Can I add a little bit to that? I just want to add about the predator's mind, which is, you know, this AI or the deadlight consciousness that we talk about here. And so when we heal our own selves, when we step into this, into the path of healing ourselves and healing our mind first, what happens is we gain this new energy signature of our mental body. It changes. It becomes fluid. It becomes you know, like a living light frequency that is so unpredictable. Even to, you know, to ourselves. And the beauty of that, once we, and this is when we can step in and recognize that new energy signature that we actually are having, stepping out of that hive mind mentality and stepping into this new mental energetic signature. And so, that to me is what we can recognize in each other, and it gives us that fearless feeling of being okay making mistakes and being okay with moving forward with that signature, with that new signature that we're going to have. Our mental bodies will change, the energetic level will change in this collaborative mind period.
thanks.
That's all I want.
That leads perfectly into our next slide, which is the collaborative mind. So we're moving from the collective hive mind into what I'm calling the collaborative mind, or I guess we're calling the collaborative mind, as this term seemed to catch on with all of us. This collective mind is very different. It values diversity, and that's what I was talking about before, where we appreciate each other for our differences. We value our differences. We can come together on the basis of conformity, but we have to recognize that it's the ways in which we are different. And I think all of us have probably had that experience, probably at work with some of our coworkers. There's a collective project on the table, and there's one person that always goes and does some aspect of the project that you're like, oh, thank God, because I hate doing that. I'm so glad that so-and-so is willing to do that, likes doing that. And we can find examples of that, I think, in our lives where we really appreciate that people are different from us. And that's, I think, something that we can really focus on, that we really need to value our differences. It's a very essential step to creating this collaborative mind. The collaborative mind is egalitarian. We're all equal in this collaborative mind, but it's an equality based in our infinite nature, not just a congruent, conformist, you're the same packet, and that's the same packet, and you're the same packet. No, we're all a different infinite package, but we're all equal. Infinity equals infinity. This collaborative mind recognizes sovereignty, choice, self-determination. We're coming together in this new reality creation as a matter of choice. We're not just born into this collaborative mind as a default setting. This is something that once you recognize your own sovereignty, define yourself as an individual, define your own integrity, you then have the choice to come together with others that likewise are sovereign individuals and want to and choose to collaborate together. That's the difference. This is actually a conscious choice to come together and create something new together. This demands integrity and authenticity. You can't fake it in the collaborative mind. Bullshit isn't going to work. It's just too easy to see through. If anybody's trying to fake it, I'm sorry. It's too easy to see through it, and we're seeing it in the news all the time. It's just. I'm sorry, but anything less than authenticity is just getting really, really easy to spot these days, and we're getting so used to it.
You can't fake it until you make it. That it won't work anymore. Hive mind, yes, you can fake it until you make it. Not anymore.
So we're going to value our creativity, innovation. The reason I put the word innovation in there is that in collaborative endeavors, I was thinking along the lines of intellectual property rights when it comes to inventing things. You know, in the history of the world, it's so crazy that one person owns the patent on something, and then everyone else has to go buy this device, and they say, well, I could improve this 10 times. I could make it 10 times better by just improving it. But you can't do that because somebody else owns the intellectual rights to that thing, and you're not allowed to improve upon it. That's why I threw the word innovation in there. We need to be allowed to innovate again and build upon each other's ideas. Say, hey, that's a great idea, but you know what? I can add this to it. And the original person is like, whoa, I would have never thought of that. We need to live in a space where that's just a natural thing, that we build upon each other's ideas and trade upon them, because that's just the way a natural human should function, in my view anyways. And the collaborative mind is fully conscious of itself and the extent of its creational ability. What I was aiming at there is that once we get used to building collaborative minds and functioning within them, I do believe that eventually we will know exactly how we are creating reality moment to moment. Right now, it's still a fairly mysterious process. Like I say, I'm not completely intimate with my own spirit, but I do believe that it is myself and my spirit that are creating that. And as we move more and more into the collaborative mind, it'll be revealed to us more and more exactly how it is that we are creating this holographic external reality for our shared experience. And this, I guess, is my big concluding statement. Once humanity has transitioned from the unconscious hive mind collective via the path of self-healing, so the self-healing that we're going through now is a process that's bringing us to the possibility of the integrated collaborative mind. And once we reach that place, we'll be standing before a blank slate, or if you prefer, a blank canvas, and we're ready to then consciously create a brand new experience. I believe that's the direction that we're ultimately heading in, and that's what I wanted to talk towards.
Thank you, Niels.
Wouldn't mind commenting on this collaborative mind idea, because it is very important in my opinion. A lot of why the control structures have had the power that they've had over us is because they've understood these concepts and have been in that kind of place where, as Neil said, unity isn't just about what we can agree on, it's also about recognizing how our differences can be accents upon our own beings and how we can fit together like puzzle pieces. And with us moving into this collaborative mind, we're taking that power back over our reality that they have had over us for so long. And that's why it's always come down to choice. The choice to be part of a collaboration as opposed to competing with each other, and seeing the beauty in the differences between us as opposed to feeling repelled by them is very important. So thank you for bringing that up, Niels.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna
Thanks for emphasizing it.
yeah, I'm gonna tie in a few things. I think the next slides are the ones that I'm going to do. Maybe I'll want to take a break in a minute too. But what Lily said, along with, excuse me, sometimes when I try to talk, okay. What Lily said, along with what Niels is saying here, which is this emerging creation, there is us being able to understand, read, transmit energetically, which is beyond what you were saying of the words. I know we're all looking at this in a way of this ability that we are growing, really growing, where we do connect with each other without even the need for visual or resonant verbal connections. And I think we've all experienced that to a greater degrees now, where we realize our consciousness is in connection with other consciousness, and that's being shown back to us in the reality of our world. But the one thing I wanted to say too is that we think of mind as this thing that figures it out, and it puts the pieces together and it puts it out on the table. What I think we're going to go into next is the emergent consciousness, which is fluid energy. And so we actually, in the process of emerging right now, we don't even know what we're creating. Because the authentic self will, by its very, very nature, will start to bring it forward when we get into this collaboration here. So we'll all of a sudden, I see it as this: we're all going to be looking at a field, or the blank slate, or the canvas, and our consciousness is going to emerge through us in a very organic manner, and that is going to be creating this brand new experience. Does that make sense?
And I think we've been experiencing that in talks that are exactly like this, that yes, we've each prepared something that we want to bring through, but there's also the collaborative aspect of it, where something new is also coming through all of us at the same time, and we're feeling it energetically, and it opens it up to the possibility of us building upon each other's ideas. That is this is the collaborative mind right here being demonstrated to a small degree, and it's going to build from here.
So, well, thank you so much.